Hoang was 27 years old, born and raised in the lowlands, only familiar with bustling city life. After a year of struggling with work and a broken relationship, he decided to take a long leave, hoping to find a peaceful place to clear his mind. An old school friend, Hoang, who now lived in Kalang village up in the northern mountains, called him after hearing the news. "Come up here. The mountains are cool and fresh. There's an abandoned house in the village. No one's lived there for years. You can stay there for a while." Hoang chuckled over the phone. "An abandoned house? Are you trying to scare me?" Hoang laughed. "It's just been empty a few years. The owner left after a flash flood wiped out half the garden. Locals say it doesn't feel peaceful, so they avoid it, but I think you'll be fine. The first night's just a bit lonely." That half-joking, half-serious tone sent a chill down Hoang's spine, but he still agreed. The road to Kalang twisted sharply along steep cliffs. The bus stopped in the late afternoon as mist began to roll down the mountains. The air was cold and damp, carrying the earthy scent of the forest. Hoang picked Hoang up on a motorbike and rode into the village. The fog was thick, stilt houses faintly visible in the distance. Chickens darted across the road. Dogs barked in the distance. The forest was beautiful but held a lonely, haunting silence. At the edge of the village, Hoang stopped in front of an old wooden house. The wood had faded, palm leaves on the roof had fallen in patches, and tall grass grew over the steps. The air was still, with only the wind whispering through the cracks in the walls. "This is it?" Hoang frowned. Hoang propped the bike stand and gave a half-smile. "Yeah, it's old, but sturdy. I cleaned it up a bit. Just stay a few days to get used to the mountain air. If it gets too cold at night, come crash at my workshop." Hoang stepped onto the porch, brushing his hand against the mossy wooden door. It creaked as it opened. The inside was dim and smelled of damp wood. Thin shafts of light came through gaps in the planks, casting a glow on thick spiderwebs in the corners. He set down his backpack and grinned. "Yep, this is classic abandoned house vibes." Hoang looked around, his voice lowering. "Locals say the owner vanished after the flood. No one ever found the body. Since then, during stormy nights, people hear footsteps crunching in the yard." Hoang turned sharply. "Are you serious?" "Yeah, but it's just stories. I've never seen anything," Hoang said, patting Hoang's shoulder. "Stay a few nights. Just don't go outside after midnight." That night, Hoang lit a fire, made instant noodles, and sat on the porch listening to the valley stream. When the wind rustled the bamboo behind the house, it sounded like whispers. He pulled his jacket closer and looked up at the starry mountain sky. Just as he started to feel calm, a knock, knock, echoed from somewhere inside the house. Hoang turned toward the sound, seeing only faded wooden walls and dusty floors. He tried to reassure himself. Probably just a loose board in the wind. But when he stepped inside and swept the dim flashlight around, he froze. On the thick layer of dust, faint footprints appeared, small, childlike prints, leading toward a dark corner filled with cobwebs. Hoang stood frozen in the dim house, eyes fixed on the child-sized footprints in the dust. They were faint but clearly traced a path from the door toward the shadowy corner. His heart pounded in his chest. He took a deep breath and slowly moved forward with the flashlight. Each step creaked loudly in the silent house. When the beam landed on the corner, he saw only rotten old things, a broken bamboo basket, half a clay jar, and layers of spiderwebs. He frowned and whispered, "Maybe I imagined it, just scattered dust." He knelt and reached out to touch the nearest footprint. The dust was soft, but strangely, the center of the print was damp and cold, as if it had just been made. A chill ran down his spine. Outside, dogs barked and then abruptly went silent. Hoang stood and stepped onto the porch. Taking a deep breath, the forest at night was hauntingly beautiful, yet eerily still. On the distant mountainside, faint lights flickered from stilt houses, their smoke blending with the fog. As night deepened, Hoang locked the door and lay on the floor. The chirping insects and murmuring stream lulled him into a light sleep. Around midnight, a soft sound woke him, not creaking wood, but a slow, rhythmic knock, knock, knock from the porch. like someone tapping a stick on the wooden railing. Hoang froze, heart racing. He sat up and listened. The sound came again, sometimes near, sometimes distant, then silence. Total silence. He grabbed the flashlight, hands trembling, and peeked through the window. The fog outside was thick. The weak yellow beam barely reached the steps. No one was there, only the bamboo gently swaying. He exhaled deeply and turned to go back to bed. But at that exact moment, a faint white shadow passed quickly by the rear door. Hoang stiffened, paralyzed, swallowing hard. He forced himself to step out onto the porch. The mountain air was freezing. Everything smelled of old wood and damp fog. The steps were empty. He swept the flashlight across the yard. On the moist ground, a trail of small footprints clearly led from the steps toward the bamboo grove. Hoang clenched his teeth, torn between fleeing back inside and the strange urge to follow. Step by step, he followed the trail. The prints led into the dense bamboo. Wind whistled through the leaves like whispered voices. Suddenly, from the deepest shadow, a child's voice spoke softly, right behind him. "Uncle, don't go." Hoang spun around, startled. Behind him was nothing but mist and insect sounds. But ahead, caught in the flashlight's beam, a small figure stood still. A child, 6 or 7 years old, with soaking wet hair. Like they'd just come in from the rain. Their face was pale under the light, with deep, black eyes staring straight at him. The child didn't move. Their voice came again, quiet and merging with the wind. "Uncle, don't go into my house." Hoang's spine turned to ice. Before he could react, a gust of wind blew, swirling the dense fog. When he blinked again, the child was gone. Only the rustling bamboo remained, and the fading footprints in the cold mist. Hoang stood frozen in the grove, breath quick and shallow. His whole body was cold, not from the mountain air, but from that voice repeating in his mind, "Uncle, don't go into my house." Step by heavy step, he retreated toward the yard. When he reached the porch, he shut the door and leaned against the wooden wall, his heart still racing. The flashlight shook in his hand, its beam revealing faint wet marks on the floor, like someone had just walked in from outside. Hoang bit his lip, trying to calm himself. "Don't panic, you're just exhausted, imagining things." He lay down again, but couldn't sleep. The wind through the walls, the crickets, and his own heartbeat seemed to blend together, making the whole house feel like it was breathing. The next morning, the highland sky was unusually clear. Morning sunlight streamed through the thin mist that clung to the slopes. Roosters crowed from distant stilt houses, sounding strangely peaceful. Hoang stepped outside. The yard was smooth and damp. The child's footprints were gone. Only scattered bamboo leaves and that earthy forest scent remained. He decided to visit Howe at the workshop. As he walked in, Howe called out jokingly, "So, how was your first night in the haunted house? Don't tell me you heard ghosts." Hoang stopped, looked around the empty workshop, then leaned in with a low voice. "Howe, last night I saw child footprints. They led into the bamboo grove. And then, I saw a kid." Howe's smile slowly faded. He looked Hoang in the eye. "You saw the child's face?" Hoang nodded, still shaken, pale face, soaking wet hair. "They told me not to go into the house." Howe swallowed hard, eyes flickering with fear before turning away. "All right, I guess it's time I told you the story." Howe led Hoang to the back of the workshop, where there was a small wooden table. He poured a cup of tea, his voice dropping low. "Back then, that house belonged to a couple and their 6-year-old son. That rainy season, a flash flood came down from the mountains late at night. The husband ran outside, but the wife couldn't escape in time while holding their son. The water rushed in and swept away the entire floor of the house." Hoang felt a chill crawl up his spine. "So, did they ever find the bodies?" "The wife was found the next morning, down by the stream, but the boy was never found. The villagers say he was swept into a deep ravine. Since then, the house has been abandoned. People claim that on stormy nights, they sometimes see a small shadow running across the yard, or hear knocking at the door." Howe hesitated, then looked straight at Hoang. "I've never seen anything myself. But if you did, Maybe he chose you to send a message." Hoang stayed silent. The pale child in the mist kept replaying in his mind. That evening, Hoang returned to the abandoned house. He cleaned more thoroughly, bringing the old items outside, while sweeping the corner of the floor where he'd seen the footprints. The broom hit a loose wooden plank. Curious, he pried it open. Beneath the floor was a small hollow space. Shining his flashlight inside, Hoang's heart clenched. Buried in the moist earth and dust lay a faded blue plastic toy car with one broken wheel. He picked it up and rinsed it under the outdoor spout. In the slanting light of dusk, Hoang saw messy lettering scratched on the side in marker, T. He sat quietly on the porch, holding the toy car in his hands. In his head, the child's whisper returned, "Uncle, don't go into my house." That night, Hoang lit incense in the yard and placed the car on a makeshift altar. Bowing his head, he murmured, "Your name is T, isn't it? I'm sorry for disturbing you. I only want to help you find peace." The mountain wind passed through, and the incense flickered faintly. Through the pale smoke, Hoang briefly saw the outline of a child standing near the bamboo grove, watching him, then turning away and disappearing into the mist. When Hoang stepped back inside, the fear was gone, replaced by a quiet sadness. He knew the story of this house wasn't over yet. The next afternoon, Hoang decided to follow the small stream behind the house, the place Hao had said the flood swept through all those years ago. The highland forest at dusk was hauntingly beautiful, filled with awe and a strange unease. Fog had begun to drift down the slopes, curling around mossy trees and whispering reeds in the wind. Hoang walked slowly, eyes scanning the surroundings. The sound of the stream echoed faintly in the distance, mixed with strange bird calls from the rocky cliffs. The deeper he went, the narrower the dirt path became, only wide enough for one person, with thick grass on both sides forming a green wall. Hao followed behind, speaking in a low voice. Back then, the mountain rains were brutal. The elders say the flood that night swept away cattle, timber, everything. Hoang nodded slightly, eyes locked on the shimmering stream. Large stones filled the riverbed, tangled with rotten logs and moss. He imagined that stormy night, the house shaking, the roaring water swallowing everything. At a bend hidden behind the bamboo, Hoang suddenly stopped. On a large rock by the stream were pale white marks, smeared in the shape of small hands, like chalk stains, but spread like a child's touch. Hoang bent down and reached out to feel them. A sharp cold jolted from his fingers to the back of his neck. Hao watched silently, then whispered, "Villagers avoid this spot. They say the boy's spirit often returns here." Hoang stared at the stream, his heart sinking. The child's deep, sorrowful eyes flashed in his mind. What had he felt? Swept away in that freezing flood? That evening, Hoang didn't go inside right away. He sat on the porch, eyes fixed on the bamboo grove. The crescent moon rose late, casting a pale light through the thinning mist, making the old wooden house look even more still. He took out the toy car, cleaned it carefully, and placed it on the doorstep. A strange thought came to him. If the boy's spirit truly lingers, he'll recognize this toy. Near midnight, just as Hoang was dozing off, a soft sound came from the yard. Tiny footsteps rustling in the dirt. He peeked through the door crack. A small figure was crouched by the steps. Under the faint moonlight, it reached out and touched the toy car, then lifted its head and stared directly at the door. As if it knew Hoang was watching. The face was still pale, hair dripping wet, but the eyes no longer held fear or anger. Hoang trembled, but didn't run this time. He slowly opened the door, voice shaking. "T, is that you?" The child didn't speak, just bowed its head, gazing at the toy. For a brief moment, Hoang saw the faintest smile flicker at the corner of its lips. Then the figure dissolved into the mist. The toy car remained, cold and still on the step. The next morning, Hoang decided to speak with one of the village elders. He went to find Old Min, one of the oldest people in the area. The old man sat on the porch of his stilt house, his eyes cloudy but voice calm. Hoang greeted him and asked directly, "Grandpa Min, about the missing boy years ago. Did anyone ever search for him?" The old man sighed, his wrinkled fingers fiddling with the stem of his pipe. Of course, the whole village searched for days. But the flood was too strong. His body likely washed into the deep ravine. The mother died. The father left the village. Never returned. That house has been empty ever since. Hoang swallowed hard and asked again, "Do you know why people say they still see the boy's shadow at night?" The elder gazed toward the distant forest, his voice gravelly. "In this village, those who die unjustly and whose bodies are never found, don't rest easy. They want to come home. But someone has to bring them back. Someone has to make offerings. Only then will they stop wandering." His words left Hoang speechless. He thought again of the boy's eyes when he touched the toy car. The child hadn't tried to scare him, it had reached out, asking for help, seeking a path home. That night, Hoang lit incense in the yard and quietly prayed, "I'll help you. I'll bring you home, so you won't have to wander in the cold mist anymore." The mountain wind stirred the bamboo leaves. And in that moment, Hoang clearly heard the faint laughter of a child, echoing softly through the silver fog. The next morning, Hoang woke up early. The highland sun had just risen above the mountain ridge, casting faint golden rays through the lingering mist that blanketed the valley. The distant sound of roosters crowing echoed from the stilt houses, blending with the gentle murmur of the stream, a familiar yet lonely harmony. Hoang stepped out onto the porch, looking down at the steps where he had left the toy car the night before. It was still there. The dew had dulled its blue plastic shell. A firm resolve formed within him. He had to find a way to help the child's spirit find peace. He went to find Hao and told him about seeing the child again and what Elder Min had said. Hao listened quietly, his face paling slightly. "You're thinking of holding a ritual? This isn't like the lowlands. Spiritual matters up here need the village shaman." Hoang nodded, his tone steady. "I know. I just want him to rest. I've stayed here for days. And every night I hear footsteps. I see him in the mist. He's not trying to hurt me, he's waiting." Hao sighed and led Hoang to visit Shaman Lu, the elderly spiritual leader of the village. His home sat apart on a mountainside, its porch decorated with bundles of dried herbs and wind chimes made from mountain shells. Shaman Lu sat on a wooden platform. His face was wrinkled and thin, but his eyes were deep and clear. After hearing Hoang's story, he sat in silence for a while before finally speaking. Child spirits taken by floods and left without a body often linger near where they once lived. They wait for someone to guide them, but incense alone isn't enough. To rest, they need to truly return home. Hoang's voice dropped. "You mean, we have to find his remains?" Shaman Lu gave a slight nod. "If there's anything left in the streambed, it must be brought back. If not, we must set up a shrine in his old home, perform a ritual to invite him back, and have villagers witness it. Only with a home and offerings will he move on." Hoang felt both fear and determination. He turned to Hao. "Tomorrow, I'm going with you along the stream. Maybe we'll find something." The next morning, the sun broke through, but the mountainside was still wrapped in white mist. Hoang and Hao brought a shovel and a coil of rope, following the stream behind the old house. The water whispered softly, birds calling faintly from the forest beyond. After nearly an hour, they reached a deep rock hollow carved into the mountain. The stream slowed there, forming a clear pool. Bits of rotting wood and forest debris were caught around it. Hoang froze when he spotted something lodged between the rocks, a tattered piece of cloth, almost completely decayed. He carefully pulled it out with a bamboo stick. Beneath it lay a small, faded red plastic bracelet, clearly a child's. Hao took a sharp breath. It must be his. The flood must have carried him here. Hoang clenched the bracelet tightly, its chill seeping into his skin. In that moment, he swore he heard a child's whisper echoing in the silent woods. "Uncle." He spun around. Only the wind stirred the bamboo, its rustling like whispers. That afternoon, Hoang and Hao brought the toy car and bracelet to Shaman Lu to prepare for the ritual. An altar was set up on the porch of the abandoned house, with a new incense bowl, a cup of water, and small bundles of sticky rice. Smoke curled upward into the misty air. blurring the space between this world and the next. Shaman Lu murmured incantations, his voice deep and steady, blending with the mountain wind. A small brass bell in his hand chimed softly. Hoang knelt beside him, heart heavy, eyes fixed on the incense smoke swirling upward, searching for a familiar form. Suddenly, a strong breeze blew through, tilting the smoke sideways, and in that moment, Hoang saw the boy again, standing on the steps, deep black eyes gazing at him. The child slowly bowed his head, then stepped backward into the mist and vanished completely. Hoang bowed his head and whispered, "Go in peace, little one, this home will now have incense for you." The wind quieted, the bamboo grove behind the house fell eerily still. No more footsteps at night, no more knocking. The mountains returned to their original silence, as if nothing had ever stirred. That night, for the first time, Hoang slept soundly in the wooden house. No sounds disturbed him, only the stream and insects gently rocking him to sleep. In his dream, he saw the boy by the stream, smiling softly before turning and running toward the warm lights of the distant village. In the days that followed, the old wooden house seemed cloaked in a peace it had never known. Morning light filtered through the planks, making the dust sparkle. At night, the forest winds and streams sounded gentle, no longer haunting. Hoang began adjusting to life in the highlands. He helped Hao fix motorbikes, cooked dinner over the fire in the evenings, and occasionally visited villagers. They shared stories of farming, rice harvests, and the forest, but no one spoke of the abandoned house anymore. One afternoon, while Hoang was sipping tea on the porch, Elder Min happened to pass by with his cane. Hoang quickly stood to greet him. The old man squinted at the house, then rasped, "Been peaceful lately, hasn't it, young man?" Hoang nodded. "Yes, very peaceful. I sleep much better now." The elder nodded slowly, but then lowered his voice. "Peace is good, but the story's not over yet." Hoang felt a chill. The elder gazed toward the misty mountains and whispered, "The boy's father, he's still alive. Some say they've seen him at a market down in the lowlands. He doesn't dare return, afraid his son's spirit might blame him." The words lingered in Hoang's mind that entire evening. The pale child's gentle, sorrowful eyes came back vividly. One question echoed in his heart: if the father knew, would he come back? A few days later, Hoang and Hao went down to the district market to buy supplies. The highland market was bustling, filled with the scents of corn wine, grilled meat, and wood smoke. Vendors shouted over the hum of a Hmong flute playing in the background. As Hoang was picking out coarse salt, his eyes stopped on a man standing at a corn wine stall. The man was thin, wearing a faded jacket, hair unkempt, eyes hollow like someone haunted by endless fear. Hao followed Hoang's gaze and let out a breath. "Oh no, that's Mr. Sin, the boy's father." Hoang's grip tightened around the bag of salt, feet rooted in place, torn between rushing over and holding back. Hao called out first, "Mr. Sin." The man jolted, spinning around, when his eyes landed on Hao, then shifted to Hoang. Hoang saw fear flash clearly in his face. The man stepped back, stammering, "Why, you're from the village?" Hao nodded. "That's right, you still remember your house in Kalang, don't you?" Mr. Sin's face went pale, eyes darting away. Hoang stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "Your son, he's still waiting to come home." Mr. Sin shook, clutching a bottle of wine like an anchor. Don't say that. I can't." Hoang looked him straight in the eyes, his voice trembling. "He never hurt anyone. He was just sad. He stayed there all these years, alone in the wind and mist." The man fell silent, his weathered face crumpling as tears welled in his eyes. Hao spoke gently, "If you don't come back, he'll keep wandering forever." Mr. Sin collapsed onto a wooden stool, his trembling hand covering his face. His voice cracked, torn from deep inside. "That night, the flood was too fast. I ran out to tie the buffalo. When I came back, the house was gone. I saw him being swept away. I couldn't save him. I was terrified, so I ran." Hoang's heart twisted. He gently placed a hand on Mr. Sin's shoulder. "It's not too late. Come home. He'll forgive you." That evening, Hoang brought Mr. Sin back to the old house. The mountains once again faded into the pale mist and earthy scent of twilight. Mr. Sin stood quietly at the steps, eyes wet, gazing into the dim house. Hoang lit the fire and incense. Mr. Sin knelt down, hands trembling as he raised the incense to his forehead. "My son, I'm home. I'm sorry." The mountain wind stirred. From the bamboo grove behind the house came a soft rustling. Hoang stood behind him, a chill running through him, but there was no fear this time. In that moment, he saw the boy's silhouette faintly by the porch, his gentle eyes fixed on his father. Before fading into the incense smoke, Mr. Sin bowed his head and sobbed. For the first time in many years, the mountains of Kalang echoed with the cries of an old man, carried gently on the wind. That night, after Mr. Sin had returned to the old house, Hoang thought everything had finally come to an end. There were no more rhythmic knockings, no more child-sized footprints in the dust, just the sound of the stream and chirping insects gently lulling him into a deep sleep. But peace in the highland forests never lasted long. The next morning, when Hoang stepped out onto the porch, the valley was wrapped in thick early mist. The mountain breeze was cool and fresh, but an indescribable unease lingered in his chest. Mr. Sin had woken up early and now sat silently on the steps, eyes blank, staring into the bamboo grove behind the house. Hoang walked over and gently asked, "Uncle, did you sleep okay last night?" Mr. Sin gave a faint nod, but his voice was hoarse and trembling. "He came back, looked at me once. Then he left. But I dreamed of his mother, standing by the window. She just stared, didn't say a word." Hoang shivered. He recalled what Elder Min had said. The mother had died the night of the flood. Her body found the next day, but no proper ceremony had ever been held to guide her spirit. Perhaps her soul was still restless too. That afternoon, Hoang decided to visit Elder Min again. The damp dirt path led past cornfields and scattered stilt houses. As usual, the old man sat on his porch, drying tobacco and shooing chickens off the steps. Hoang greeted him, then asked directly, "Elder, if the boy's spirit has been brought home, why did Mr. Sin still dream of his wife?" The old man gazed toward the distant mountains, his voice low and deep. "She died unjustly, holding her child in fear. Folks around here believe that when you die in terror, your soul often lingers. The house may be at peace for the boy, but the mother, she may not have left." Hoang swallowed hard, a chill creeping down his spine. Elder Min continued, "There might still be a secret in that house. Tomorrow, you should check the crawl space beneath the floorboards. No one's dared open it since the flood." The words struck Hoang like a sudden gust of cold wind. Back at the house, he stared at the old wooden trapdoor, right where he had once seen the child's footprints. In his mind, the rustling of bamboo echoed, blending with that childlike whisper from days before, "Uncle, don't go into my house." That night, the fog was thick and heavy. The wind howled through the mountain passes like a long, sorrowful wail. Hoang lay in bed, unable to sleep. His thoughts circled endlessly around the crawl space and the lingering spirit of the mother. Around midnight, a creaking sound echoed from the center of the house. Hoang sprang up, flashlight in hand. The pale beam swept across the empty room, catching on stained walls and trembling cobwebs. The sound came again, this time from the corner of the room where the small hollow beneath the floor lay. Hoang stepped closer, crouching down. In the light, he saw the earth beneath the floor had been disturbed. One of the wooden planks trembled slightly, and from the crack, a cold breeze rose and brushed against his face. Suddenly, a soft sigh whispered right beside his ear, a woman's voice, sorrowful enough to tear the heart. "Who brought my child home?" Hoang's hair stood on end. His heart pounded, but his legs were frozen in place. He stammered, Are you the boy's mother?" The wind whistled again through the floorboards, carrying the scent of damp earth, mold, and a faint trace of wilted forest flowers. The sigh turned into a quiet sob. "I'm cold, so cold." Hoang trembled, stepping back, but what rose within him was not fear, but sorrow. He leaned forward once more. Beneath the beam of the flashlight, Something flickered, a torn piece of floral fabric, like a woman's traditional garment. His hands shook as he picked it up. It was covered in dirt, moss, and decay, but under the light, Hoang noticed a long-dried dark stain, an old bloodstain from the night of the flood. At that exact moment, the entire house seemed to shudder, as if a violent gust had swept through. The curtain by the porch flapped wildly, and through it, Hoang caught a glimpse. A woman with long, wet hair stood by the window. Her eyes locked on him, unblinking. A chill ripped down his spine, and he stumbled back toward the corner. But when he blinked, the figure had vanished into the dense fog outside. Only the howling wind and the endless rustling of the bamboo forest remained. Hoang collapsed to the floor, clutching the decaying fabric in his hands. He understood now. He had uncovered the house's final secret, and the mother's spirit had not yet found peace. Hoang sat in silence inside the wooden house, his hand clenched tightly around the decaying piece of cloth. Outside, night mist rolled over the steps, and the cold scent of damp earth and forest drifted into his lungs. In his mind, the sorrowful whisper of the woman echoed, "I'm cold, so very cold." He knew the child's spirit had found comfort, but the mother was still trapped inside this house. And if no one helped her, she would keep wandering in the mist, watching from the window with those sorrowful eyes night after night. Taking a deep breath, Hoang stood up and ran to Hao's house. Hao opened the door, startled by the sight of his pale friend holding a ragged cloth. "What happened, Hoang? You look like you've seen another ghost." Hoang, panting, told him everything: the sigh, the woman's shadow, and the blood-stained cloth. Hao listened, his face going stiff. He swallowed hard. "Damn, I remember the elders saying that during the flood, the wife was still holding her child when the water swept them away. Maybe she got trapped somewhere under the floor when the water receded." Hoang shivered. "I need to ask Shaman Lu to perform a ritual. Otherwise, she'll never be at peace." The next morning, the village was still blanketed in fog. Hoang and Hao climbed the slope back to Shaman Lu's house. After hearing their story, the old man fell into a long silence, a sadness flickering in his eyes. So her spirit still lingers. She couldn't follow her child because no one ever called her home. No one promised her incense, prayers. Shaman Lu quietly began preparing the offering, a new incense bowl, small bundles of sticky rice, deep violet forest flowers, and a small brass bell. He turned to Hoang and instructed, "Stay in the house tonight. I'll come when I begin the calling ritual. You must stay calm, don't fear, don't run." By dusk, the forest had sunk into a deep bluish gray. Low clouds clung to the mountainsides. Cold air crept through the wooden slats of the old house. In the center of the house, Shaman Lu set up the altar. The torn floral cloth was placed in a small bronze bowl beside the incense. The smoke curled upward, blending with the mist, making the house feel like it was dissolving into the forest. His voice was deep and steady. "Wife of Sen, mother of the child, tonight, we call you home. Your son has found peace. He waits to be reunited." The mountain wind howled. The curtains fluttered violently. Suddenly, a soft creak came from the ceiling. Hoang looked up, and for a fleeting moment, saw a streak of white sliding across the wooden beam. Long, soaked hair hung down like dripping water. Shaman Lu continued, his voice louder now, the brass bell chiming with each phrase. "You're still cold, still sorrowful? Follow the trail of this incense smoke. Here, you will have warmth, offerings, a home. You no longer need to wander the mist." A sudden gust slammed through the room, making the candle flames flicker wildly. Hoang trembled as he saw the woman's figure standing at the altar, face pale, eyes deep, but no longer filled with anger. Behind him, Mr. Sin collapsed to his knees, sobbing, "My love, it's me. Forgive me, I've come back." The woman slowly bowed her head, and in that moment, Hoang felt a cold breeze pass through his body, then rise with the incense smoke, disappearing into the roof beams above. The house fell silent, the wind faded, only the distant murmur of the stream remained. Shaman Lu let out a long breath, his voice soft and kind. "It's done." She followed her son, This house will finally be at peace. Hoang dropped to the floor, sweat soaking the back of his neck. For the first time since arriving in the highlands, he felt true stillness, not eerie or heavy, but deeply, beautifully quiet. But late that night, lying in the darkness, a strange feeling stirred in Hoang's heart. The forest was too quiet. Mist fell gently on the thatched roof. He remembered her eyes before vanishing into the incense smoke, eyes full of sadness, but also holding something unsay. In the days following the ritual, the wooden house in Kaleng was wrapped in an unusual stillness. No more rhythmic knocks, no more tiny footsteps or sorrowful sighs in the night. The mountains were still blanketed in mist as always. But to Hoang, it now felt like a rare, gentle peace. Mr. Sin chose to stay in the house. He lit the fire every morning and swept the earthen yard. His eyes no longer looked hollow, but carried a quiet calm, like someone who had stopped running after many years. Seeing that, Hoang felt his heart lighten too. But that peace didn't last. One night, as Hoang drifted into sleep, a soft tapping came from the back wall of the house. At first, he thought it was the wind, but the tapping continued, slow, steady, deliberate. Hoang opened his eyes, heart pounding, and sat up in the dark. He shone his flashlight toward the corner. Nothing. The sound stopped, but just as he lay back down, a cold draft rose from beneath the floor, carrying that all too familiar smell of damp mold. Hoang shivered. He whispered to himself, "No, it can't be. Both spirits are gone." He didn't sleep that night. Elder Min's words echoed in his mind. That house still holds one more secret. The next morning, Hoang decided to inspect the entire house. He opened every window, letting sunlight pour through the wooden walls. The old floorboards were stained, some rotting in patches. When he bent down to check a narrow gap near the corner, he noticed something unusually dark beneath. He grabbed a flashlight. The ground under the house wasn't empty. It looked like someone had once dug a hole there. Hoang called Hao to help. Together, they pried up a few rotting planks. Beneath them was a shallow pit filled with decayed wood and damp soil. But in the center, something gleamed faintly, a rusted machete. The blade still smeared with a dark, dried stain. Hao drew in a sharp breath, his voice dropping. "Oh God, this isn't from your house. That's a Thai-style jungle blade." Hoang picked it up, a cold chill rushing down his spine. Deep scratches lined the blade, as if it had clashed with something hard. He murmured, "Could it be? Something happened here before the flood?" Hao looked around, his voice unsteady. "I remember hearing stories. Before Mr. Sin's family moved in, the house belonged to a stranger from the lowlands who came here to clear land. One night, he disappeared. Then someone else moved in. The mountain air suddenly felt colder." Hoang recalled the look in the woman's eyes before she vanished into the incense smoke, sad. Yes, but burdened by something unspoken. Maybe she had tried to show him the truth that had been buried all this time. That evening, Hoang and Hao brought the machete to Elder Min. The elder took one look and fell into thought. "I know this blade. Years ago, a lowlander came here. Every night, he sharpened this machete. One day, he quarreled with someone from the village. That night, there was a heavy storm. By morning, both the man and the blade had vanished. Everyone assumed he left, but now we know he didn't." Hoang shuddered. The puzzle pieces clicked into place. The abandoned house, the flood, the spirits of the mother and child, and the blade hidden beneath the floor. Perhaps that man hadn't died in the flood, but had been buried right here, long before Mr. Sin's family arrived. That night, as Hoang returned to the wooden house, he stood silently on the porch. Mist from the stream had risen, blanketing everything in white. The forest was vast, but eerily silent. For a moment, he felt someone standing behind him. He turned. No one, just the wind slipping through the bamboo, whispering like a drawn-out sigh. Later, Hoang lay on the bamboo bed, unable to sleep. Outside, the wind rustled the trees. Crickets sang softly. Then, a sudden chill crept up from his feet. He opened his eyes. A faint figure stood at the foot of his bed. Not the child, not the mother. A tall man, face cloaked in shadow. In his hand, the same rusted machete. Hoang bolted upright, heart pounding. The figure didn't move, it just stood there, staring at him, its gaze cutting through the haze inside the house. Then, in a blink, it faded, leaving behind only the sharp, earthy scent of cold, damp soil. Hoang understood then. This house had never truly been at peace. The spirits of the mother and child had found rest. But something else, another ghost. The final secret of this haunted house had just awakened. Hoang didn't sleep a wink that night. The wind from Kalang forest howled through the mountain crevices like whispers calling from the dark, blending with the cold, damp scent rising from beneath the floorboards. The image of the tall man holding the rusted machete haunted his mind. Impossible to shake. Before dawn, Hoang stepped out onto the porch, gazing down at the mist-covered valley. The mountains were calm, but his heart felt heavy. He knew he couldn't walk away now. The spirits had found peace, but the final secret of the house still lay buried beneath rotting wood and earth. Mr. Sin emerged behind him, face gaunt, eyes weary. He asked quietly, "You saw him last night, didn't you?" Hoang turned, surprised. "You did too?" Mr. Sin let out a long breath. "I dreamed of a man standing in the center of the house. He glared at me, said nothing, just held a machete. I know who he is." Hoang fell silent. Mr. Sin's hands clenched tightly. "Before I moved in, the villagers said this house used to belong to a lowlander. Aggressive type, always picking fights. One stormy night, he disappeared. People said he left, but really, he trailed off, eyes falling to the floor. That afternoon, Hoang decided to do one last thing. How? Mr. Sin and Shaman Lu removed the floor completely and dug deeper into the spot where the machete had been found. The cold, damp earth released a sharp, musty smell. With every shovel strike, Hoang's heartbeat quickened. Then, the shovel hit something solid, and silence fell. Howe trembled as he brushed away dirt. Beneath the wet, dark soil was part of a human skull, yellowed and stained with age. Nearby were scattered bones, mixed with soil and tangled roots. Mr. Sin collapsed to his knees, face pale. "My God, it's him." Shaman Lu remained silent for a moment, then spoke softly. "His spirit never left. He died unjustly, buried here with no incense, no name, no peace." Hoang clenched his fist, voice low. "We need to perform a ritual for him. If we don't, this house will never truly be at rest." That evening, an altar was placed on the porch of the abandoned house, bathed in soft golden light filtering through the mountain mist. A bowl of incense, sticky rice, corn wine, and a bouquet of deep purple forest flowers were laid with care. Shaman Lu began the chant, his voice deep and steady, the bell in his hand ringing gently with each phrase. "To the one who remained buried in this land for years, we invite you to follow the incense smoke and return. No more cold, no more wandering." A gust of mountain wind blew, fluttering the porch curtains, and in that moment, Hoang saw the figure of the man appear at the threshold, still holding the machete. Eyes filled with long-held rage. But then, something changed. Mr. Sin stepped forward, voice shaking. "I'm sorry. I stayed silent for years, left you here alone. From now on, I'll offer incense for you. Please, let go." The figure stood still for a long moment. Then slowly, the man bowed his head. The wind stilled, the evening mist began to lift, and the figure faded, dissolving into the rising incense smoke. Silence blanketed the entire mountain. Only the sound of the distant stream and birds calling from deep within the forest remained. That night, for the first time, Hoang slept soundly in the wooden house. No more tapping, no more sighs, no more figures in the mist. Kalang forest had returned to its original stillness, as though it had never held such grief and wandering souls. At dawn, Hoang stood on the porch, gazing into the valley. The fog slowly melted away, and the first light of day cast a golden hue on the mountain slope. In the distance, the bamboo grove swayed gently in the breeze, but today, its rustling sounded calm, almost tender. He knew then, the haunted house had finally found peace. Yet in his heart, a faint unease remained. Like the shadows of the past still lingered somewhere deep within the mountains, watching, waiting, or simply remembering.